Okay, we're recording.
Okay, wonderful. So welcome, friends. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start with a prayer and a chant, and then short meditation.
Do you want to lead the prayer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
great masters of self-realization,
great masters of self-realization,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
and Paramhansa Yogananda Ji,
Paramhansa Yogananda Ji,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
friend and guide Swami Kriyananda,
friend and guide Swami Kriyananda.
we humbly bow to you all.
We humbly bow to you all.
Guide us in our time together.
Guide us in our time together.
Help us to feel thy divine presence,
Help us to feel thy divine presence
shining through each one of us.
shining through each one of us.
Help us to be open
Help us to be open
to thy divine love
to thy divine love
and to share this love
and to share this love
as divine
as
friends
a divine friend
to all.
to all.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. What did we decide on?
I think either one is fine. I think we said listen, but the other one is fine.
I need to adjust my mic.
Okay. Oh. He's adjusting his mic. Yeah. I think he bumped it, yeah.
Yeah, the cord hit here. You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's that?
As I'm walking it, I can hear it
Oh, you can hear the sound
rubbing
of it.
against my shirt or something. Okay. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake Sit up tall, relaxing the body, relaxing the belly. Let's meditate for just a few moments as we listen deeply to the deepest truths within us, listening to our soul, listening to the divine, without any judgments, without any preconceptions of what we're listening for. We're just listening. Meditate now for a couple of minutes. Shanti, Shanti. Amen.
Thank you.
Did you want to start? Did you want me to start?
What are you feeling?
We had last week, I don't know, you've only begun listening. Did you two have a chance to listen to the? Okay.
You did. Okay, great.
So we
It was
talked,
wonderful. You had captions on it.
that's YouTube.
Not all things. So I was checking out Saganesh's lecture.
Yeah, and it
sermon on
didn't.
Sunday, and it's not captioned, but your talk.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate it when it's captioned, yeah.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
It helps a
If you talk
lot.
with an accent or something.
Right?
that's right.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, good.
So last week we were talking about divine friendship. The week before we were talking about how life is a pilgrimage, and that the relationship that we have with God is sort of first and foremost at the center of our life. And what I mentioned in the announcements on Sunday, if you guys heard, was that we were going to, I have to correct a little bit of what I was
It's
announcing.
okay, yeah.
Is we talked a little bit last week, but I was feeling like we didn't complete something with the divine friendship and how those different manifestations can show up there. And the other thing that we were talking about doing was what are the yogic tools? Hello there. What are the yogic tools that we can use to help spiritualize our relationships? And one of the things I was thinking about is that one of the yogic tools, and we're going to talk about a few of them, but just to talk about one specifically here, is there's Patanjali is somebody who wrote some ancient texts about what is yoga. And there's the eightfold path that he talked about. And in those, the two of those steps are the yamas and the niyamas. And these are, in essence, the things that we want to control and the things that we want to bring more of to have more control on. And one of those niyamas, the things that we want more of, is introspection, or just self-awareness. And so sometimes if we think about being a divine friend, sometimes it can be a little hard to know, well, what does that mean? How do I act as a divine friend? How is it, when I'm talking about with a partner or with somebody who's a good friend or my barista or somebody at work who's maybe a vendor or a customer or just, whomever. And I was thinking about yogic tools just as a way to introduce it, which is that a lot of times the yogic tools are things that we talk about in regards to the philosophical nature of these tools. Maybe we'll talk about some specifics with a spiritual counselor, somebody who we're seeking advice from. It's not often easy or readily available to know, can I take a yogic tool and actually put it into practice? And that introspection is one of, I'm just going to touch on this as an example, is one of the things that we can put into practice. If I know I'm going to be going to my local coffee shop, for example, I can introspect, okay, if I want to be a divine friend with the baristas and whatever other shoppers and customers are in there, from an introspective standpoint, what is it that's going to serve me in my relationship with God? What is it that's going to serve the barista? What is it that's going to serve those other people that I come across? And try and attune myself to what that might be and put that into practice. And then maybe afterwards kind of say, okay, well, how did that go? Just kind of within myself. So that's just a very small example of how we can look at what are these outward manifestations of being a divine friend and taking a yogic tool, and how can I put this into practice, ultimately with the goal that many of us have, which is the ultimate goal of union with God. But even if that isn't necessarily a stated goal of mine, at least coming from that place, as we talked about in the first week, which is that life is a pilgrimage. And so that if I look at my relationship with God first and foremost, then all these others can kind of emanate from there.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, yeah. Last week we talked about the levels of consciousness and awareness, and when I'm listening to you, James, I feel like you're going right to that point of how am I with others, right? So this idea of rather than wing it, right? Just, okay, whatever happens, happens. It's a practice of saying, just as you said, how do I want to show up? How do I want to be present to every encounter in my life, right? So when I was reflecting on the class and divine friendship, and James and I had talked a little bit about, as he said, just looking at the broad scope of all the opportunities that present themselves for divine friendship. So I just wrote down a few as I was reflecting on it. The first we don't often think of. We've touched upon this in the certainly in the last class. I think maybe in the first class as well. Mm-hmm. Did we?
I think a little bit.
Is the self, right? So being a divine friend to yourself and remembering to be a divine friend to yourself. And from spiritualizing your relationships, in the context of that, the idea is to nurture your spiritual life, to give energy to yourself. So as James was saying, okay, I'm going to go to the coffee shop, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. How am I going to interact with whomever I encounter? If I'm spiritually resourced first, the chances of me being able to engage in a way that feels in alignment with divine friendship, I've raised that possibility. I've increased it. And the same is true in all relationships. The more I am nourished spiritually, the easier it is for me to discern each encounter. What's the opportunity here? What's being asked? What can I offer? And I love that you keyed in on introspection, because as you described it, there's the preliminary, take some time, be centered, set an intention. Doesn't even have to really be a long time, right? That I'm just thinking of your dad now, because I remember him telling the story, certainly you telling the story, when he would come home from work, he would, before going into the house, so James is one of 5, he was aware, okay, I need to transition from work and step into dad now. And he would sit in the car and take a moment to adjust, so that when he entered the house, he could be who he wanted to be, right? Not in what James and I sometimes refer to as business mode, right? Because, last week we talked about the tendency of the conscious mind to be problem solving, figuring out, fixing, right? And how efficiency creeps into that. And sometimes not creeps in. Sometimes it's all the way in, right? Let's fix this, let's get on with it, let's deal with it. And he...
You looking at me?
Has this ever happened? Where did that term business mode come from?
I resemble that remark.
But his dad figured out that was not going to serve. So however he figured that out, whatever trial and error happened, I can imagine there was some, he knew, I need to shift out of the problem-solving mode, the business mode, the get-it-done mode, right, to be present. So he could be present to the family. And I think, in particular, his wife, who had been managing, she'd been running that domain. And so she was welcoming his presence. Okay, dad's home. So whatever was needed, I don't know, because when they talked about this, James and I met, he was much older, none of the kids, I think one sister was still in the house, but she was in college. So I just appreciated the thoughtfulness of that. And it is still inspiring to me that he had that forethought, right? To say, okay, it's important for me to show up in a different way. What's appropriate at work isn't appropriate at home. And yeah, so you reminded me of that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or...
Well, I want to go back to something you were talking about in terms of the self and sort of taking stock of how resourced am I?
Yeah.
I don't remember how you said it.
Yeah, that's close enough. Well, spiritually resourced.
Spiritually resourced.
Yeah.
And that sometimes what we might realize when we're taking stock is, I'm not very resourced.
Yeah.
So we want to be careful about boundaries getting intruded upon. But here's another one that's a little bit more subtle than that, which is maybe I'm feeling resourced as I enter into this interaction, but whoever this person is going to be very needy, is the only word I can think of in this moment, where they're going to, there's a potential that they could pull a lot of my resources out of me. And maybe that isn't what I want to happen. And I'm not talking about wants in terms of desires, but wants of, ultimately that's not going to serve either of us. And it doesn't mean I need to just separate and run away from that person, but I can just become aware of that and hold that as a part of this introspection, this idea of what is that is going on, and respond and react accordingly.
It's, sometimes it's surprising. So like James said, I could feel resourced, or I'm not noticing that I'm not, but suddenly I'm in a situation and I don't have a sense of You're talking about energetic boundaries, right? So I don't have a sense of being able to contain my own energy. It's one thing to offer energy, right? To share, to sense that someone's in need and ask the question, what can I offer them? A kindness, a smile, could be something very simple, versus as James said, it feels like it's being drained out of me.
What
right?
they really want is they want 6 hours of my time.
Maybe.
Just as an example, I'm being a little extreme here, of course, but that may be what they're asking for or wanting, and maybe I can't really afford to do that.
Right. If I'm resourced, I can navigate it. So what you're reminding me of is this, it's happened more than once, but it happened one time after work when James and I were working together. We went into a little cafe, and someone, I'm just trying to remember, no, I don't think it was in this class, it was a different class, someone was asking me or commenting on being empathic. Like when I'm saying that, meaning it's easy to feel the feelings of others. So I would say, empathy, it's a spectrum. And so just if you are someone who easily feels the feelings of others, it's a beautiful gift, but having a sense of inner resource is all the more important. Because it's easy then, without being resourced, you can get muddled in the feelings of other people. You can take on their feelings, and suddenly you're navigating what's going on for them, and you lose connection with what's going on for you. So this happened just in a small way. It wasn't a big deal, but we went into this shop, and the owner was there, and James and I, so we were in a small town, and we had our own business, so we knew a lot of the small businesses, right? We all just got to know each other. It was nice. It was a lovely thing. So it was a quiet, maybe, I guess because it was the end of the day, so his store there was no one else in there. And we said hi, and James was talking to him. And I don't remember what he said. I don't really think it was his words, but I felt a weight. I felt a heaviness. I felt a certain sense of burden on my consciousness. And I just as you were describing, I kind of felt energy go out of me. I didn't really interact much with him. I probably smiled and said hi, and then we went out to the car. But I noticed I did feel compromised energetically. And so it wasn't his fault. I wasn't looking at it like he had done anything wrong, but what I evaluated for myself is I should have stayed in the car. I didn't notice that I was depleted. It didn't occur to me that my reserves were running thin. And when they're running thin, I am more susceptible to absorbing someone else's energy. And again, I want it to be a conscious choice. So part of what we practice in divine friendship, I was mentioning this last week, is, connecting, Swami said, from the center of our heart to the center of someone else. So we want to be compassionate. We want to be present to those, right? So like with this man, I don't know that I was accurately sensing something going on for him, but it felt like that. Like he wasn't saying it, but it felt like he was burdened in some way. I don't know if that's true, but if I had been resourced, I could have sent light, right? I could have sensed whatever. I would always like to do that. I would always like to send light. So that I remember James us getting in the car and me saying to him, I need to take a moment when we're done with the day to just ask myself, do I have the reserves to be in public? Is this a good idea for me right now to do that? And so it's just a small example of consciousness, of awareness. It wasn't a catastrophe. I got through it. It was fine. But it did stand out to me to say, take care of yourself. So this is part of the divine friendship. pay attention to what you need. And I don't know if I could have stayed in the car, maybe said a prayer or something and then gone in. I really didn't need to go in. I went in unconsciously. I just, this is what we're doing. We're getting out of the car, now we're in there. And so it was a teaching moment for me. And this is part of the practice, which is and I'll list some of the other relationships here for the opportunity of divine friendship. Oh, let me finish something I didn't finish, which is, I learned this in Ananda in terms of a practice of divine friendship, which is when we feel for another. So I'm in the heart center, but what I don't want to do is have my energy go outside of me. I think I touched upon this last week, where I get, my consciousness goes down, right? So we talked about joining people on the human level. Instead, so there's an expression, my heart goes out to you. So instead of my heart goes out to you, my care and concern and compassion goes to you. But if I have my consciousness elevated up here and I'm holding you as a soul, whatever your journey is, whatever you're encountering in this moment, I'm reminding myself that ultimately all is well. Ultimately, there's a divine energy surrounding all of us. And I might be imagining that for someone else, right? If I see them struggling, and I do that, where I see them in light and I hold them in light. So I just wanted to mention that's a way of practicing divine friendship, compassion, sensitivity, and caring from an elevated practice. Is that making sense, what I'm saying? Yeah? You can ask questions if you have them. So some of the other ways in which divine friendship opportunities show up, I mentioned already James's dad, is family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, classmates, teammates, that could be sports or a singing in choir or a charitable organization that you're part of, a shopkeeper, a barista, garbage collector, a Goodwill or Salvation Army employee or volunteer, medical personnel, doctors, nurses, aides, receptionists, volunteers, again, customer service representative. All of these are opportunities. Like I'm engaging with someone else, with another soul. So what is this moment? Now I'm reminded of a story that Tandava told when he was manager of East West. And he had called somebody, they needed help, I think it was technical, internet something, right? And so he was calling for the store on behalf of the store. And it could even have been the credit card processing. It was just something particularly mundane that you wouldn't be thinking about divine friendship. But he noticed, what happened is the man said to him at a certain point, I'm really appreciating talking to you, right? And so this was a man in customer service. And, very often, and I've been in customer service, so if you've been in it, you know, it's not easy. Because usually people are calling frustrated, right? Something isn't working. So they've reached a point, very few people in my experience call relaxed, joyful, uplifted, right? And just needing support, but coming resourced, right? Coming to the conversation with resource. And it's clear that's what Tandava was doing, right? Doesn't surprise me. So, he didn't think much of it, right? In his mind, in this practice of divine friendship, hello, friend who I don't know. Yeah, I was just calling to see if you could help me with this credit card processing, something like that. And he shared the story to remind all of us, we don't realize how powerful it is to bring peace to someone else in the middle of the day, to bring a sense of ease, to bring a sense, we talked last week about calmness, that even when something is challenging, right, let me take a deep breath. And we have, maybe you all know this, but we have what are called mirror neurons within us, right? And what that
What kind of neurons?
mirror, like reflection, seeing your reflection. And what that means is that, so I'll start smiling, and if you notice, if you're looking at me, very often you'll have a smile response, right? The classic is yawning. So I'm even mentioning it. We all might start yawning. It's a bit of a risk to mention yawning at nighttime for a nighttime class. But the beauty of mirror neurons, and this speaks to the company that we keep. Someone's yawning. I started it, so I will own that. It's very
I'm
powerful.
awake and ready.
It really is, and it's a good thing, but it can, of course, go either way. Right, like I experienced that, I sensed that with that one shopkeeper, the mirror neuron, right? The empathy of I'm picking something up. It could have been my imagination, but the truth of mirror neurons is that we are impacted by what we see and what we sense. And that is, when I'm talking about sensing, I'm really talking about energy. Vibration, which is a core yogic teaching that energy, and this is an age of energy, that's what Yogananda said, we're living in an age of energy. So the deeper reality of all matter, which we now know scientifically, is energy. And another way to talk about that is vibration. Waves of energy, vibration. So when we enter into an encounter with someone else with peace, with ease, with harmony, with a sense of let me stay uplifted in my consciousness, even if this is challenging. Right? And it's something that I remember learning as a yoga teacher, and then in leading yoga teacher trainings. Part of what we say to the teachers, and I'm sure this is true at Living Wisdom School as well, and it may be true in many areas with teachers, but I just know these better, which is we have a responsibility to hold our consciousness in a certain way, right? That's our job as the teacher, to resource ourselves, to get ourselves to a place where we can bring our highest self to the moment, because we're offering that to those who are coming to us, right? And I'm reminded of when I was directing our yoga studio, I came in one morning, and this wasn't the first time, but the computer wasn't working. And there's the teachers, the computer's not working, students are arriving. Computers are not my wheelhouse. I do want to practice positive affirmations, so there might be a better way of me saying it. I continue to grow and learn how to use computers effectively and efficiently. So here's really the point, though. I remember walking in, and there's the computer's not working, there's all these students, class is about to start, soon. It needs to be tended to. And no one else, was a morning class, no one else was here. So I knew I couldn't go over to the Sangha to ask someone who might be better at that. And I had the thought, you are the director, it falls to you, lift your energy. You can't afford to let your energy drop, and even with the thought of darn it. No, you can't think darn it, because that's not going to help, right? So lift the energy and say, no problem. Solution consciousness. Well, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And what I've learned is the blessing of that one of the great blessings of teaching is that, okay, it's my responsibility to lift my energy, and how good that is for me, right? And then I try to carry it home to say, okay, can I have the same response when I might be able to, I'll do air quotes, get away with not having the highest energy? How to bring the highest energy home. And last week we were talking, James and I, about, We set off on this great adventure, and part of our commitment to one another is to bring our best. Because, and that takes conscious intention. It really does. You become more and more familiar with one another, and boy, you've been lifting your energy all day, you've been giving your best all day, you've put it all out all day, and it's so easy. I'm thinking of Keshava now, where he used this example, like he said, try to sit with a sense of composure versus collapse in a chair, right? And Letty's laughing. It's interesting because when he said that, he said it can be really tempting at the end of the day when we're tired to like collapse. And there's this, dramatic effect. And there is something, I will say for myself, that can kind of certainly feel natural about that. Like, oh, I'm just wiped out. But what he was saying is really have mastery of your energy, because the position of the body affects our consciousness. That's a yogic teaching. So when I collapse, I'm sending the signal, I'm wiped out, I'm exhausted, I've got nothing. Now, it's one thing to be humorous about it. It's another thing to do it unconsciously, right? So talking about bringing your best home, I don't know if that's what James's dad was doing in the car, but I know we practice it. And with self-honesty, because we're human, and it might happen where you just kind of realize, okay, I'm not sure what's going on. One of us might say to the other, are you okay? Are you doing all right? And the other person will say, I'm just really tired. I'm just really tired. So they're doing their best, but what's coming through is maybe being shorter in speech, and they're not effusive in terms of high, abundant energy, because it's the end of the day and they're tired. And I'm just making that point because part of the practice is something Swamiji, I've heard many of what we call the first wave, the pioneers with Swamiji, the first group of students with him, talk about. His energy was always high. And it's hard to imagine, always having high energy. And Asha says that she remembers one time, sometime after she'd been with Swami for quite a while, and he said to her, he made the comment, you used to get this kind of desperate fatigue on your face, like, you're just trying to keep up, right? And it can really feel like that. So it's a balancing act, right? Back to divine friendship of the self. I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it. If you just need a break, you need to pull back, you need to get resourced, it's fine. But to do it intentionally, right? To do it with a sense of, that's just something we practice. Like I might notice it in my tone.
I want to interject on this point. This is a really, really important point that you're bringing up, to bring our best self that we are able to. And it can feel like under the guise of friendship, and I'm differentiating friendship from divine friendship, to bring my best self it's a good thing to do. And that's true, it is. But as a divine friend to myself, capital S, self, I want to bring my best for myself.
That's right.
Because how I manifest myself, whether it's the energy or any of these other yogic tools, these yogic philosophies that are in play, if I do my best with that, then my whole being gets the benefit of that.
Yeah.
Not just the person that I'm interacting with. And so the divine friendship to the self is ultimately that innermost circle that we want to be cognizant of and aware of.
What you're reminding me of is something Yogananda said, that the channel, right, the instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. Mm-hmm. So, there is the conscious, be a divine friend to yourself, and there's also, when we're being a divine friend to someone else, what we're offering is blessing us. So that's what I was saying about in the role of teacher. Like, okay, this is my responsibility, this is what I'm doing. At the end of the day, my consciousness is elevated. Like, oh, everything I gave, right, changed me. So the blessing of that opportunity is incredible. And to have the awareness of that what we offer, what we give to others, especially when we're practicing bring your best self, it transforms our consciousness at the end of the day, right? And that is a welcome surprise, right? So it's a welcome surprise that we are blessed in this practice of giving and sharing. And there was something, the thought came in. Yes, so I was looking in our Raja Yoga book. Many of you, maybe all of you will be familiar with this, but since just want to show that. So I was looking at the chapter, Life is a Battlefield. And I just felt to look in the Raja Yoga book today, and that was the chapter I opened to, and I smiled and thought, divine friendship, it can feel like that.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
Sometimes it can. It can feel like, wow, okay. And I mentioned that in the first class, that I was very aware in preparing for the class, the moments of feeling like I didn't measure up. I didn't do what I wished I had done, even if I'm not sure what went wrong. And that can happen, right? I was saying in the first class, the mystery of being so sincere and intentional and bringing my best, and then the outcome is one where I just shake my head and say, I don't know. I don't know why it went that way. But what's interesting in the chapter of Life as a Battlefield, Swami begins talking about peace, the quality of peace. And he paints this picture, which I remember the first time I was reading it, and now each time I read it, I'm reminded of that first exposure to this teaching, and also how pervasive the worldly idea of peace is, which is no conflict, no difficulty, no hardship, no upset. Then I have peace. And Swami said, it's not true. That kind of pathway to peace lowers our energy and lowers our consciousness. And we become less, not more, in that situation. But it's very tempting, right? And there's a strong cultural movement to get everything lined up right. And Asha talks about this, that the ego wants comfort and ease. And so, the temptation, the problem-solving conscious mind, I'll just get everything set up. I'll only have harmonious relationships, right? Any that aren't harmonious, see you later. Moving on, right? I'll only work somewhere that is easy. I'll only do this, right? And now things need to be discerned with introspection. So I'm not saying, and Swami said, don't go look for challenges. Don't do that. But when they come, ask the question, what's the opportunity here? So we often say in Ananda, we have this sentence, and I may have already said it in this class once, but for me it's worth repeating, which is the question, why is this happening? And if I am approaching a life with, I need all difficulty to be removed in order for me to have peace, then I'm going to ask that question, shaking my fist. Why is this happening, right? Versus if a yogic approach would be introspection. Why is this happening? What is the opportunity here? What is coming to me? And how can I respond as a divine friend to myself, to the situation, to others? Now, it might be, and I'll use this example that's coming to mind. I was a caregiver at one time, and I was working for an agency, And I had been partnered with a woman. I later found out, I think she went through a lot of caregivers because she was a very unkind woman, and it wasn't obvious at first, right? So when I started working with her, she was very nice to me, and the agency pairs you with people. But every time I saw her, she complained about the previous caregiver. I just would listen, and she'd tell me how terrible they were and all the things they did wrong. It was a premonition, or it was a foretelling of what would come, which I didn't know. Right? I was just offering companionship and allowing her to say what she said. And over time, she became meaner and meaner and crueler until one day I was calling someone, speaking of customer service, I was making a phone call for her. I don't remember what the issue was, but I was helping her out by making the call. And she started yelling at me and whatever the conversation I was having with the customer service person. And she berated me in such a way that it just happened to go really deep, really fast, like the expression hit below the belt, right? And it caught me off guard because I'd been kind of handling it. I don't remember, I'm glad I don't, what she said. But it caught me, and tears just like came straight to my eyes, and I thought, you're in a profession. I was trying to pull it in, right? Like, this is a professional moment. You don't cry, and I couldn't help myself. It was so hurtful and so unkind, and it shocked her. I saw it shock her, and I could hear the sensitivity of the woman on the phone, because she could hear the woman. Right, so she could hear the things that she was saying. And I like caught in my throat and was like, I was like trying not to cry. And I said, give me a moment. And I just like dropped my head and cried a little bit until I felt like, okay, let that go. Now, she didn't say a word after that. It really did catch her. And I later wondered, was that a divine moment where actually something greater was working through me to show her what she was doing? Because prior to that, I was holding it together, right? And so I then came back to the phone call. We finished the phone call, right? I didn't say anything to the woman that I was working with, but so then, the day ends, the shift ends. I don't remember how much more time there was. I go home. I was talking to a mentor of mine about the experience, and I was just sharing, what had happened, and, gosh, it was surprising, and, I was sorting it out, I guess is why I was talking to her, and what I was sharing was a lot of compassion for the woman that I was taking care of, because what I was saying is, she must be so incredibly unhappy that she would be doing that. And my mentor listened to me. And then she paused and she said, I can hear that you feel a lot of compassion for her. And I said, I do feel a lot of compassion for her. And she said, I just wonder, what about you? And that shocked me, that surprised me. And I was taken aback. She said, do you have any compassion for yourself? And, it's interesting, but it was, I didn't and hadn't thought of it at all in that moment. And then she challenged me, and this is what a divine friend can do. So a divine friend, sometimes I remember Devi, one of our spiritual directors of Ananda Worldwide, said in spiritual counseling, in divine friendship, we're not always just offering, support that feels good and comfortable. Sometimes our support is challenging because we recognize a moment where course correction is needed. And that's what my mentor did. She said to me, first she asked the question, I was surprised, okay, no, I hadn't thought of that. And then she said to me, because what I was trying to do was get my energy back up so I could go back. I mean, I hadn't even thought of not going back. It never even occurred to me I wouldn't go back. And she asked me, is that a wise choice? Sounds like she's gone through other people, right? Which I sensed by that point, right? And she said, maybe she needs to see it's not okay to treat people like that. Maybe she needs to lose you. What do you think? And that was a shocker for me. And I part of me was reeling, and I'm very responsible, and I was feeling a sense of like, well, it's my responsibility. And she said, there's an agency. You work for an agency. They take care of her. Why not call the agency? Did you tell them what happened? I hadn't even thought of telling them. She said, well, I'm going to invite you to consider that. And I will tell you, it was profoundly uncomfortable for me. But she delivered it at the exact right moment I could hear it. And this is part of divine friendship, is being able to assess when to say something, right? And I came home, and I don't know if you remember this, but I remember talking to James about it. And I could feel the right decision was to call the agency in the morning and tell them what happened. And for me, risk, how will they view me? Will they think I should be stronger and should tough it out? I'm happy to say not at all. So, it wasn't even a moment of me telling them what happened. And they said, no problem. So what time was your next shift? Okay, we've got someone else for you. And I was like, well, do I need to say goodbye? Nope, we'll take care of that. And that was also stunning. Like, I'm not even going to engage with this woman anymore. But I asked myself, I just could hear my mentor, perhaps she needs to see that. Perhaps it will help her if suddenly you don't come back. And I thought, wow, I can see the truth of that. Now, I can't say if she learned what she learned, but so this idea, because I'm talking about life as a battlefield, right? And we're not avoiding difficulties, but we're also not enduring when it's not the wise choice. And how to discern that, right? So what Swamiji is saying about peace is a divine quality. And so it's how we meet life that will invoke it within us, will give us access to peace. It's not making everything outside perfect. And the decisions that we make, if we make them in a line, this week for those who may be attending the Inner Renewal Week is about Dharma. So right action, or being aligned with higher consciousness, making a decision that is a difficult but right decision, that will bring peace. So I had to put out more energy, which I was trying to do, but I was going to put it out to endure. And instead, I was guided by a mentor to put out energy to make a statement instead. So I think I'll pause with that.
Yeah, I want to touch on another two additional yogic tools that were in play there that you sort of briefly mentioned one, which is truth. That truth is one of the yamas, going back to the yamas and then niyamas. And the friend who you were talking with was very truthful of, is that the wise thing? What about compassion for yourself? That was truth, that there was an element that your friend knew that you could take that question of what about compassion for yourself? You could take that well. But there's another aspect of truth, and again, Swami talks about this in the Raja Yoga book, where sometimes the full truth can be hurtful. So not going so far with truth as to go back to the client to say, I'm leaving and here's why.
Right. Interesting. That is an interesting point, right? Not going to her and explaining.
Exactly.
Right. Let the decision speak for itself.
So you were, in a way, being a divine friend to the client.
It's interesting.
Through your actions.
Yeah. I do believe that.
And
Yeah,
I,
that's
and I
a
think
nice way of saying it.
that's important, that when we hold these yogic tools in how we're going to be a divine friend, that there's never a formula. We need to look at the circumstances of the situation
Look at our consciousness.
and
Right.
look at our consciousness.
But boy, the value of that mentor, and it's one of our yogic tools, which is a teacher and a guide. To have someone in your
Yes.
life, at least one person, that you're able to go to and seek counsel, right? Bring the challenges of life to. I think I might have been in this class mentioning it last week. I think I was. The idea that over time, yes, because I was talking about intuition and superconsciousness, over time, we get better and better at being able to discern appropriately for our journey. And then the wise counsel, the teacher, the guide, more often than not, is simply affirming, right? And, maybe because you've said what you're doing, or just the guidance they're giving you lines up with what you already came to. And it can be very helpful to feel, okay, I was getting that same message, and my teacher's telling me that. So I'm getting better at being able to discern that. It can be a way of strengthening it. But also to have someone who knows you and you trust that they have your highest good as they're holding that for you. So
Your capital S self.
the capital S self, right? So, I know that part of what I look for in a divine friend is someone who holds my highest self, who will be sensitive in their discernment when they're talking with me. They won't bulldoze me with truth, right? And that's something about truth that in the teaching of yoga, so one of the yamas is non-lying or truthfulness. Swami says that it's, which James was touching upon, it's more than factual, right? It's more than, well, here's the facts, and I'm going to tell you, especially in a case of what you did wrong. I'm going to tell you what you did wrong. Can someone even hear that? Is that helpful? Is that the right way to deliver the message? Sometimes people really can't hear it. And so it's not a good idea. But more than that, what we say, how we say it, the practice of truth is that truth should always be beneficial. It should help someone. It should help someone.
You should create the opportunity to help.
Right.
That other person still needs to. We can't control how they're going to act.
Right. But asking the question, is this the moment to say something? Will my words be helpful? Are they asking for my input? It's one thing to go to a teacher and a guide and you're asking for input. It's another when someone takes it upon themselves. I think I'll be your teacher and guide. That doesn't go so well, usually, right? It doesn't. And so that's part of divine friendship practice I was talking with a student recently about this practice of a divine friendship, and the sentence that has really guided me well is to ask myself the question, is this my student? Right? Is this my student? Now, this can be someone like, let's say, James, right, who's not my student, but in the moment, are they coming to me as a student and saying, could you help me? I really need some guidance here. So we do offer that for each other, and we're specific about it. If we need guidance, can I run something by you? Will you give me your take on this? Will you give me your perspective? And the practice is not to impose it, right? So, but truly to offer it and say, yeah, this is my assessment. This is what I see and feel, and in knowing you, and this can be very true of friends, family, partnership, we get to know the intimacy of one another. So, like holding that with care, holding that with my words can heal or hurt. So am I bringing healing to this moment? Am I bringing hurt to this moment? And if I misstep to take a breath, say a prayer, and heal it, like just come back. We were talking with some friends recently about this idea that healthy relationships aren't without rupture. They're not without mistake. So that, just like the idea of the peace, seeking peace by no conflict, no difficulty. All healthy relationships, because we're human beings, we will make mistakes, we'll get it wrong. But knowing how to come back to one another, friends, family, whatever maybe it's a customer service person, and you realize, well, that didn't handle myself well. Right? Can I change that? Is that someone can I adjust how I, maybe in the middle of a phone call, let me take a breath and say, I'm sorry, frustration's getting the better of me. So I apologize for what I just said. Right? It can be quite powerful. But this idea, so I used the word rupture, this idea that something that the trust or the bond or the connection can kind of break in the mistake, and then come back and repair it and say, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Now, maybe someone's bringing it to my attention. You hurt my feelings, you upset me. And introspection, sit with, take that in, and then offer, at the very least, I'm sorry it felt that way, right? I'm sorry if it felt that way. And then if I clearly can see I've done a misstep myself, I was unconscious, I wasn't paying attention, to apologize for that. And the bond gets stronger. That's the beauty of it, is that actually very strong relationships are a rupture and repair, right? So we don't want to rupture all the time, right? So this is part of discerning.
It's not rupturing the whole relationship.
It's not.
It's some piece.
It's some piece, yeah.
I had said that there were two tools that I wanted to touch on. The second one, which is something you didn't mention, but I remember was
Okay.
in play,
Okay.
which is the tool of prayer. That, again, coming back to the foundation of all of these spiritualized relationships is our relationship with the divine. That coming into the situation that you were describing, because I recall that you were praying, what do I do? What do I say? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I say this? Do I say that? And the way that we pray can be very helpful, and in our interactions with other people, especially if there's a difficulty of some sort. Maybe we're both feeling the difficulty, maybe just I'm feeling the difficulty. In my experience, what prayer can do is it's not just a God help me kind of a prayer, but what a true prayer does for me is it gets me out of my head and it gets me into my heart center of, okay, God, help me. It sort of softens my energy a little bit. And the mental tension, which includes emotional tension, can be lessened through that prayer, helping me to hear an answer or interpret the answer through a thought of, okay, here's what I can do. Here's what I can say. And sometimes if it's an interaction that's happening in the moment, that can be really, really helpful. That in all of these, in any of these interactions, it's not just me who's in the interaction, that I have God and Guru with me.
That's beautiful, yeah. I was feeling to hand these out.
Sure.
So what James and I brought were, thank you, Derek. So these are tools and practices of yoga. We've been touching upon them, and when James mentioned prayer, it really stood out to me. And for those who are watching the recording, we'll send these, this will come with the recording for you. So I'm just going to go through them. The first, I'll just read the list. So affirmations, maybe we can go back and forth. Affirmations, which is a positive statements of truth that call forth our ability to heal the mind, body, and spirit.
Pranayam, directing energy or life force to support health and wellness on every level.
Prayer and meditation, talking to and listening to God.
Asanas, specific movements of the body that are therapeutic and revitalizing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Healing and renewing for body, mind, and spirit.
Satsang, keeping good company, cultivating a community of support, spending time with other truth seekers.
Environment, bringing awareness to your surroundings and making choices that support the life you want to create and sustain. Physical space, emotional space, mental space, inner life, etc.
Teacher, guide, seeking the support of someone who's gone before you on the journey, someone who knows the terrain and can offer insight and understanding that helps you find your way, someone who will challenge falsehood and provide comfort and compassion when needed.
Chakras, an energy blueprint, centers of energy within us that represent different qualities of consciousness, positive and negative. Utilizing and working with these can help build the qualities we need for growth and awakening.
Sacred chants. Yogananda said that chanting is half the battle. Music bypasses the mind and leads us directly to the heart. When we chant or listen to sacred music, it uplifts our consciousness and reconnects us with our soul nature.
Seva, joyful service, serving the divine through service to others.
So tonight, as we've been talking, you may notice, we've been touching upon these different practices. We began this evening with prayer and chanting as a way of setting not only the energetic quality of the space, but helping all of us go deeper within ourselves and lift our consciousness, right? So that in our time together, we're being supported energetically. That's part of why we pray and chant together. The pranayam, so I feel I've mentioned a few times, but I will consciously mention taking a breath. So pranayam is ultimately, as it says here, it's directing energy, life force, to support health, wellness on every level. So one of the quickest ways to work with energy is with your breath. Is to begin to, if you feel agitated, to bring awareness to the breath and begin to slow the breath down and take some deep breaths. Now, sometimes if you try to do that and it's difficult, you feel like, I can't, I'm too agitated, then the double breath can be very helpful, where you tense the whole body and throw the breath out. Tense the whole body, throw the breath out. Once more, I'll show you. Tense the whole body, double breath, and throw the breath out. Doing that can help bring all the energy into focus and bring you to a place where you can work with that energy and give you a sense of mastery of your energy, of your breath in that moment. So having awareness of the different tools and just asking yourself, how many of these am I utilizing? Are there any here that, gosh, they've kind of fallen to the wayside, or maybe I've never even tried, like asana, yoga postures, right? Would that be helpful? Would that be beneficial, right? You can ask the question of any of these. Environment. Coming to class is a way of tending to environment because it's tending to our consciousness, right? I'm reminded of Saranya and Eugene talking in our first class with this intention of learning, right? Married many years. I think, did you say 46? 48. 48. 48. So inspiring. right? And your dad saying to you at the beginning of your relationship, still learning.
Yeah, it wasn't even the beginning part.
Oh.
It was when he was celebrating his 50th. My parents
Oh.
were celebrating their 50th.
Okay.
Yes, I'm still learning.
We should have the mic so
Oh,
that,
that's okay.
Well,
okay, so she's saying, just so you can hear, it was her father said still learning at his 50th wedding anniversary celebration, right?
Also, Eugene is saying,
Get the mic, sweetie. Hold on one sec. I want you to be able to, yeah, since I'm inviting you in here. Yeah.
So Eugene is saying also, when the two of us were married, my father said that also, and he said it again at his own 50th wedding celebration, and we looked and wow, thought still learning. Oh, okay. I remember that as well. And yes, so he said it again. He said it at our wedding, and he said it also when they were celebrating their 50th, just maybe when we were the family round talking or something.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Eugene. I thought I remembered that.
okay.
Yeah. So setting the intention, right? And it inspires me to always be learning, right? Say, okay. It's a way of reminding ourselves of the importance of staying engaged and growing and learning. And then also, I will add, being compassionate with myself, still learning. That, right? Saranya's nodding, she's looking at me, right? The compassion of, it's okay, we're still learning, right? We're still learning. So, satsang, keeping good company, cultivating a community of support, spending time with other truth seekers, this is also part of satsang, right? Coming together, coming to classes. It is what I find is one of the most powerful ways to keep my consciousness strong, to keep me strong in my aspirations.
I want to interject two things. Sometimes these tools and practices can be utilized in surprising ways that you wouldn't necessarily think, ways that are not necessarily the norm. An example, I'll give you two examples actually. Asanas, which is the yoga postures. We can go to a yoga class, we can take the postures classes, we can watch a YouTube video, and there's lots of different ways of doing those. But here's another practice, and I have practiced this, and I think you have too, which is I'm talking to somebody wherever, whatever it is about, it doesn't really matter, and I'm standing, and I will consciously come into what's known as standing mountain pose, Tadasana. I may even repeat the affirmation in my head because it helps me stay centered and grounded and conscious and aware of what's happening. I'm not getting all twisting and turning and working on that, but I am aware of my physical presence and therefore my energetic presence.
Will the camera be able to pick us up if we stand?
I don't know.
Okay. So I apologize if our heads go out of camera view, but I want to invite all of us to stand.
Do you want me to go back there and adjust the camera while you do whatever it is you're going to do?
Okay. Just see if you need to adjust it. You may not need to, because I was going to have you stand as well, James. This idea, oops, James, is that you?
No,
Is that me?
it's the handheld.
It's the handheld. Oh, okay. We'll turn that off. Actually, I don't think I did that right. Okay, sorry. I don't know how to, I moved this. Okay, so standing mountain pose. On our sheet is also the chakras. And so standing mountain, you're standing. You're just standing. But bring awareness to your feet, connected to the earth beneath your feet. And the crown of your head, the top of your head, just reach toward the ceiling a little bit with the top of your head. And then relax. Take some deep, full breaths in and out. Belly relaxed. And see as you're standing if you can feel your energetic center, that which keeps you from falling over. Something as simple as standing isn't so simple. When you watch children learn how to stand on their own, you get an appreciation for how much is involved in learning to balance as we stand. So I'll bring you back to that standing in Tadasana. And as James said, this is a practice of finding our center, feeling balanced, feeling present. So visualize as you breathe, energy rising from the base of your spine, moving up through the body to the base of the skull and through the brain to the point between the eyebrows. As you exhale, just imagine energy flows in reverse direction. And as you inhale, it comes back up the spine again. And then a sense as you breathe that energy flows through the whole body. Now maybe you can feel it, but it's fine if you can't. Going all the way down to your feet, and then inhale and imagine the energy rising up through the body, coming into the face and the top of the head, and then washing down one more time with an exhale. Very nice. And then we'll come back and sit, and I'll say a little bit more about this practice. Actually, I'll ask James to say, did you want to keep us standing?
No, go ahead and
Okay.
sit down. But I
Okay.
want to demonstrate one other
Yeah, please do.
that came to mind. Actually, I have two things to say.
Sure.
Another one that I have practiced, which is, it's sort of, it's not the actual posture, it's more reminiscent of the posture. The posture is the eagle pose, Garudasana. And it's more for the affirmation of the eagle pose, which is, at the center of life's storms, I stand serene, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole posture it's complicated. There's a lot of twisties and turns. But if I just stand here and I do this, I cross my leg, because this is reminiscent of the base of what my legs do in that pose. I mean, I would kind of be doing something. But if I just stand like this, it brings the affirmation to my consciousness. At the center of life's storms, I stand serene. So if I'm in an exchange with somebody where there's a lot of energy, and I could be so pulled out of my center, and I stand like this in the middle of that exchange, at the center of life's storms, I stand serene. And it helps me. I'm being a divine friend to myself. It's a very, very small, subtle thing. So this is my point of, this is sort of an unusual way that an asana can come in as a yogic tool in our divine friendships.
It's bringing together those who are familiar with Ananda Yoga. Swami wrote out affirmations for all the poses. So part of this practice James is talking about, you can, with affirmation practice, it can be something you mentally repeat, you verbally repeat, you can memorize the affirmations, or with the poses, you are affirming and bringing your body into a particular position. And in the yogic teaching, the position of the body influences consciousness. Mm-hmm. So it's bringing those two things together, and it just strengthens it for you. So what I'm hearing you say is that he just reminds himself, oh, Tadasana, find my center. Feel the ground beneath my feet. Lift my energetically my body. Lift the crown of my head towards the ceiling. Relax my shoulders down from the ears. These little things can just help us physically, which then helps us emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
The second one I wanted to touch on is satsang, that you touched on briefly. Keeping good company, cultivating a community of support, spending time with other truth seekers. And I was thinking about, this is satsang here, that we all are together, including if you're watching online. I was thinking about two other kinds of satsang, two other examples. One example is myself, and the other is David, your husband. So, hi, David. Which is, we both have the, and I know you as well, but I just happen to be thinking about us. We both have the opportunity to serve at Ananda. David serves as the community manager down in our apartment complex, and I work here on the grounds here. And we are constantly running into other people, mostly other Ananda people. And sometimes it's just literally passing somebody by. It's just, hi, how you doing? And in that moment, that's seva. It's a reminder that we are, as if this other person is on this path.
Do you mean satsang?
I'm sorry, satsang, yes.
Yeah.
It's the other S, satsang. I said seva, but I meant satsang. That it's a reminder that if the other person is an Ananda person in particular, that we are on this spiritual path together. It doesn't have to be it's not about what the exchange is. It's just the reminder as I run into this person, oh yes, we are here to help each other.
Yes,
okay, but
Letty.
hold on, let me get the mic going.
I actually have a story to share about that.
Good.
David was walking around, my David was walking around the community, and he was not feeling so happy that day, or he was a little off. And James happened to drive by, and he said, "Be thou a yogi." And that just totally changed David. He's like, "That's right, that's what I'm here to do."
Wow.
And that completely changed his attitude for the rest of the day.
Isn't
and
that
his mood.
something?
Yeah.
How beautiful. Thank you, Letty, for sharing that.
And that was the entirety of the interaction. There were no other words spoken.
Well, I'm wondering if there are any questions or comments, right? So just to let you guys, anything, just to give you an opportunity if you'd like to say anything, ask questions. And it's fine if you don't, but let us know if you.
I have a question, but I'm
Okay.
not exactly sure how to ask it, I think.
Okay.
And it's really a simple question, I think, but when you keep talking about the self
Yes.
and the capital S self,
Yes.
and I know what that means, but when you're using it in talking about someone, say, supporting the self, the higher self, how does that work? If I'm thinking of the self, capital S, as God, tell me, how do you see that the other person would be relating to, or do you mean that the other person is relating to your highest self? What if the other person is not relating to your highest self?
Okay, let me try to understand, Saranya. So, do you mean, you keep the mic, do you mean when the other person is my mentor, or?
Well, you used it several times.
Okay.
And you would say specifically, thank you.
Yeah, thank
say
you.
Specifically, capital S. When
Yes.
you would say I'm not sure if you can remember when you were saying that.
That's okay. But so you're
Being a
wondering,
divine friend to the self.
being a divine friend to the self?
Oh, yes, okay, so that was one example, right?
That's
So
one example.
I'm supposed to be a divine friend to the self.
Yes.
But you're saying a capital self.
Okay.
Well, it can actually work both ways. That in my interactions, my soul self, my higher self, should also be a divine friend to my sort of worldly self,
Egoic self.
my egoic
Yeah,
self.
that's
So
good
so the
clarification.
example in Vivekadevi's story of, were you compassionate with yourself?
Right. So a way to talk, and it's a very good question, a way to talk about it, Yogananda said that our ego is part of the soul. It's the aspect of the soul that's on the journey of awakening, remembering its full divinity. So we have our highest self, which is living in the consciousness of divinity, unity, oneness with God and all. That's our highest self. That's super conscious awareness. The ego is in either subconscious or conscious awareness, right? And it's learning how to be super conscious, which is its own nature, but it's on a journey for that. So if I'm a divine friend to myself, my highest self is being kind and loving and compassionate to my ego, my egoic self, right? So actually it was ego on my part that could see compassionately the woman I was taking care of, but couldn't see myself. And when my mentor said to me, is it a good idea for you to go back to this job, right? Are you being compassionate with yourself? And she encouraged me to call the agency and tell them what happened. My egoic self was worried about my reputation. Would they think I was weak and not up to the work? And would they, it was my ego that felt that way. My higher self was working through the divine friendship of my mentor and then to myself. My higher self guided me to say it's the right thing to do, to call the agency. This behavior should not be tolerated. It's not appropriate. She way crossed the line in her behavior. And there should be consequences for that. Have I clarified it? Thank you so much for your question.
Good
It's
question.
a very good question, very important, right? Yeah. And thank you, Letty, for helping. Saranya, for those who don't know, because you can't see, she's doing sign language for her husband, Eugene. Yeah. So Letty was holding the microphone for her, so she could do both. Teamwork, satsang. Yeah. So Letty, did you have another question? No? Eugene? No? Okay. Either of you? No, it's fine. Did you have something you wanted to say, Letty?
Yes.
Okay.
When you say resource, you keep
Yes.
using the word resource. Can you
Explain that.
a little more?
Yeah, these are such beautiful questions. So resource, I think of it sometimes like a reservoir. That's a metaphor, right? So if you think of a reservoir filling up with water, and then the reservoir is full, so it's full. So when I talk about resource, I'm talking about my energy and my consciousness feeling full of one of the 8 aspects of God. So full of light, or full of peace, or full of calmness, full of joy, full of divine power, right? These are the ways Yogananda said we can experience God tangibly, full of wisdom, right? Love, but let me just finish that. And did I miss any?
Light.
Saranya,
Light,
Saranya helps
vibrations,
me.
or sound.
Light or sound, vibration of Om. So it's a very good question about resource. I'm looking for my, back to self, right? I'm looking for a sense within myself that my cup is full. My cup is full. And any one of those 8 aspects is enough. If I feel any of them, then I ask myself, how strongly do I feel them? Do I feel deeply calm, profoundly peaceful, full of joy? I mean, that would be the reservoir's full, right? After Sunday service, right? At there's certain events where I feel like, okay then. the reservoir has been filled up again with grace. So our reservoir is filled with grace. And if it's running low, then attend to it, right? So at the end of the day, Yogananda encouraged us with introspection to evaluate our day and ask the question, how did the battle go? It comes from the Gita, the Mahabharata. And it's a practice, a yogic practice of evaluating how well, because we're talking about divine friendship, how well did I do today with divine friendship? Did I meet others with kindness and compassion? Did I bring light to all my interactions? Was I a friend that was divinely guided to say something to another that changed their day? I don't know if you even knew that had happened, if David had ever told you that. Mm-hmm. He did. I love hearing it. I appreciate it. So if at the end of the day, I look and, sometimes didn't go well. Yeah, I don't feel good about that interaction I had with someone. And I really can see it at the end of the day. Maybe it missed my awareness during the day, or I was somewhat aware. But now that I'm sitting with it, oh, I can really see it. And rather than judge myself, I use that as information, data, to say, okay, what is it that I need in order to correct that and do better, right? And usually more resource. So, okay, so what? Now I look at my list. Affirmations, pranayama, prayer and meditation, right? I do this mentally because I know the tools. But if you don't know them, you could have it on your altar as a practice, something this week. And just, we have so much available to us, right? But don't always remember it. So then it's like, if my reservoir is, when I begin to go lower than half, I fill it up, right? I mean, I love it to be overflowing. My cup runneth over. That's the ideal. Between half and overflowing, there's a lot there to work with. But once it starts dropping lower than half, and they say that about in keep your car tank half full, right? So think of that spiritually for yourself. Keep your tank half full. And really, because you can get away with it being less than that, I don't recommend it. Yeah, I recommend half full or fuller, and then every interaction is so much easier. Then I don't need the world to look a certain way to have access to peace. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah, it's such a good question.
I want to add two more things to that, because it is a really good question. And I'll be quick with this because I'm aware of time.
Okay.
Is my reservoir, am I resourced enough? Is a good concept to hold. Now, sometimes I may be entering an interaction that I'm just taking stock in my level of reservoir. It is what it is. Do I think it's enough? Well, if I think it's enough, then I can go ahead and have the interaction. And maybe it turns out it wasn't enough. And I can just, again, be aware and conscious of what's happening to me in the interaction. And if it's not enough, I'm feeling really depleted, that whatever just happened depleted me more than I was planning, and now I have this thing and I just don't have enough. Can I do something about that? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we just have to figure out how to channel whatever resources we can and use our willpower specifically. Yogananda's phrase of the greater the willpower, the greater the flow of energy. The greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism.
To draw grace.
And what that does is it draws grace, it draws energy. And that leads me to the second thing, that all of those things that you talked about filling the reservoir of all of these manifestations, this is the divine reservoir. Our egoic mind, people in the world who aren't on the spiritual path, are going to hold our am I resourced in a different way. Did I get enough sleep last night? Am I overly emotional, or am I more even keel? That those are the two primary ways, not the only, but those are the two primary ways when I'm not resourced. I'm too emotional, or I'm just too sleepy. I just don't have the energy. I don't feel like I can even walk outside the door. And that's neither good nor bad. That just is. I mean, those of us on the spiritual path, we run into that as well. Oftentimes, those are a manifestation. When I'm feeling physically tired, I'm feeling overly emotional, those are manifestations of something else that's going on spiritually.
Yeah.
So if I can come back to those things, if I can become aware of that and I can draw some things together, I am more likely going to be able to fill my reservoir much more readily and easily.
Yeah, I love how you call it a divine reservoir. That's the best way to refer to it. And, Yogananda said, take reasonable care of the body and then forget about it. But take reasonable care. So it's not that we ignore our bodies, our health, try to sleep and these kinds of things, but what will really sustain us is grace. What really allows us to be a divine friend in the world, to be a channel, an instrument of light, is grace. And that's not dependent on a physical health. the body being in a particular shape. Nope, it's not. It's not dependent upon, it's helped by sleep sometimes, but it's good for us to know, right? And that's kind of the famous story of Swami Kriyananda going to the doctor, the dentist, and a long questionnaire. Have you ever, fill out your health? Do you have
The medical history.
The medical history. Do you have diabetes? Yes. Have you ever had cancer? Yes. Have you had a hip replacement? Yes, too. Heart surgery? Yes, right? And just every arthritis? Yes, right? So all of these conditions, and at the very end it said, how would you rate your overall health? Excellent. And that really teaches us, where was he living? In a deeper divine reservoir, right? So yes, these things are going on with the body. They don't define us, and they don't limit us. They don't have to. So this week, the practice is, again, continuing with divine friendship, but in particular, look for opportunities, how they show up, like, oh, okay, opportunity for divine friendship, and what tool will help you.
Including the yamas and the niyamas, if you have access to those, including the Raja Yoga book.
Chakras we didn't talk about tonight. I will just quickly say that online Asha has done some wonderful classes on the chakras. So if you don't know the chakras and would like to know more, that's a quick way to, she's done several classes to learn about that. So I think that'll be it for us tonight. Let's close, as we've been doing each week, sending out light. Do you want to lead us in that tonight?
Go ahead.
Okay. So sit up tall with a sense of the spine lengthened and lifted and the body relaxed. Bring awareness to the spiritual eye. Take some deep breaths in and out, and imagine that your divine reservoir is overflowing with any of the qualities that we talked about tonight: peace, calmness, light, wisdom, joy, love, divine power, the vibration of God, Om. And that these qualities are not only full within you, but flowing to you and through you. So you're able to call these qualities from the universe. You are a channel sharing them with the world. We'll rub our hands together, drawing these qualities into the hands, raise them, and chant Om 3 times, sending out blessings to all. Peace. Amen.
As we close, especially for people watching online, if you have any questions between now and next Wednesday, there'll be an opportunity for us to answer them next week. So you can send an email
Yes,
to
for
people
those
online.
who
You can
aren't
send us
able, who
emails
aren't
with
in
any
person.
questions from any of these 3 weeks.
Yeah, let us know. And great to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you next week.